On April 10, 1963, the submarine USS Thresher sank in the Atlantic Ocean 220 miles east of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. The USS Thresher was the lead boat in the retroactively named Permit class of nuclear-powered fast-attack submarines. Designed and built during the Cold War, their purpose was to locate and destroy Soviet submarines. This class of submarine could dive deeper, travel faster and quieter, and had more advanced weapon systems and sonar than other submarines of this era. Between its commissioning in 1961 and the incident in 1963, it would complete trials in the Caribbean and Atlantic Oceans testing weapons and other systems. In the early morning of April 9, 1963, the USS Thresher would see further such tests after a 9-month period of examinations, corrections, and repairs of the vessel and its systems. USS Thresher would rendezvous with the submarine rescue ship USS Skylark 350 kilometers east of Cape Cod in the Atlantic for dive trials. After initial tests, Thresher would remain submerged overnight, re-establishing communications with Skylark early the following morning. At around 6:30 in the morning on April 10th, Thresher resumes deep dive tests. The goal was to reach the test depth in excess of 400 meters. To put this depth in perspective, the Empire State Building stands at around 380 meters. Thresher reaches a depth of 120 meters just before 8 a.m., and after no leaks were found by the crew, it continues its descent towards test depth. Pausing every 30 meters and descending in a circular pattern, Thresher safely reaches a depth of 300 meters. However, things start to go wrong around this time. At about 9:13 a.m., Skylark begins receiving garbled transmissions from Thresher on the underwater telephone, also referred to as UQC, or just Gertrude. But amongst the static, Skylark receives a transmission stating, "We are experiencing minor difficulty, have up angle, attempting to blow." There are a few theories as to what actually caused the accident, but one hypothesis explaining this up angle was that the engine room was filling with water and dragging the sub downward. The crew attempted to blow the ballast, but the pipes that allow airflow into the ballast tanks had frozen. The USS Thresher was sinking rapidly, tail first, with no feasible way to recover. Skylark responds 1 minute later, notifying Thresher that the coast is clear should it need to make an emergency surface. Another minute passes, and the Skylark sends another message asking, "Are you in control?" To which they receive a garbled message stating 900N. There is debate surrounding the meaning of this message, but some believe that it was an answer to Skylark's question and a report on their current depth, 900 being meters and N meaning no. The current time is 9:17 a.m. and another message from Thresher is received stating, "Exceeding test depth." If the Thresher's engine room was indeed flooding, then as it sank and the outside pressure grew, the flood would only intensify. 1 minute later at 9:18, the USS Skylark detects a high-energy, low-frequency sound, characteristic of an implosion. After attempts to establish contact with the USS Thresher prove fruitless, a search party is deployed with the submarines USS Seawolf and Sea Owl, scouting the area where contact was lost. Neither submarine was equipped to handle a rescue, rather they were tasked with locating the lost Thresher. The following morning, the USS Seawolf discovered an object on its sonar at a distance of 1,800 meters, only for it to disappear once the Seawolf passed overhead and hid the target from sonar. The Seawolf would report hearing a signal from a distress beacon or pinger on its RICOM receiver. Though they could not confirm that it was from the Thresher, the crew was hopeful, as such distress beacons needed to be operated manually in order to be broadcast. USS Seawolf requested Thresher flick its beacons on and off, and after a few minutes, Seawolf reported hearing interrupted keying, which suggested beacons being turned on and off deliberately. On a second attempt to communicate, Seawolf requested via UQC that Thresher key their own UQC. Shortly after, Seawolf reported receiving 3 beacon tones, followed by 2 more 5 minutes after. At this point, Seawolf crew believed there to be survivors on board the Thresher. This would have been possible if somehow the USS Thresher's hull had not completely imploded. Seawolf would then report hearing the main sonar from Thresher, which would not only imply that there were survivors on board, but that the sonar still had enough power to transmit. In total, Seawolf counted 37 pings from what they believed to be the sonar of the Thresher. They would also report hearing a voice over the RICOM receiver, and when they requested that somebody on board the Thresher bang on the hull, they could hear the sound of metal banging on metal. Now, there are a few points to consider, one being how deep the ocean floor is in that particular area, and the depth rating of a typical nuclear submarine in the early 60s. The ocean floor in that area sits at about 2,600 meters. The test and crush depths of submarines, nuclear submarines in particular, are classified. However, Some modern nuclear attack submarines are estimated to have a test depth of around 490 meters and a crush depth of 730 meters. The chances of the crew surviving anywhere past 700 meters are extremely slim, and the chances of them surviving past that are non-existent. Acoustic analysis of the implosion audio concluded that the depth at which implosion occurred was around 730 meters. At that depth, the vessel imploded in less than a tenth of a second, creating a bubble pulse with the equivalent energy of over 20,000 pounds of TNT. The minimum time required for human perception of an event is about 150 milliseconds. 50 milliseconds for retina integration plus another 100 for cognitive integration. Nobody survived that. They were gone before they even knew it. As for what the crew of the search and rescue vessels believed they heard, that can be attributed to background noise, other search ships and subs pinging each other, or any other myriad explanation. Humans have an innate and important ability to detect patterns and disturbances in those patterns. It's how we arrive where we are today. It's a survival instinct. It can also be deceptive, looking for patterns in static, seeing things that aren't actually there, hearing sounds that defy logic. It is absolutely likely, if not true, that the rescue crews believed that what they heard were attempts from survivors to communicate with them. The unfortunate reality is that the 129 crew aboard the Thresher were all lost in that instant. While it would have been horrifying for them to wait for the end to come, it would have happened before they even realized it. If you've watched this far, I'd like to thank you. On this channel, I like to cover grim stories in as factual a way as I can. I strive for accuracy and encourage any and all corrections or amendments in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, here's your reminder to like the video, and if you're like me and these things interest you, consider subscribing. I'll upload videos as often as I have the time for them, and if there are any subjects you'd like to see covered, mention them in the comments below. Thanks again.